Ah, cool. I've got a question actually. Was there a specific type of like item or plastic that you come across more than any other, do you think? Or
around the Isle of Skye or in general?
Around the Isle of Skye in the film.
Yeah, so around the Isle of Skye it was mostly fishing stuff.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact stats with that, but a really big proportion of ocean plastic is fishing nets. And that's a difficult conversation to have, isn't it? Because, you know, when I paddled around Cornwall, one of the most common things I was finding was plastic bottles. And that's because they float, and because of the topography of Cornwall, because of the currents, they kind of wash up onto beaches and get stuck on beaches, and then you find them. Whereas around Skye, there's a lot of fishing that goes on, and so there's a lot of fishing net washing up. And, you know, with plastic bottles, you can say to people, you know, we can all use a reusable bottle, but with fishing gear, it's a slightly more difficult conversation to have.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've noticed that around here actually. I think I've seen a lot more fishing gear, like pots as well, lobster pots, the rubbers around the pots. Yeah. There's a few coves around here where it's just full of them, absolutely full of them.
And definitely in winter you'll find that a lot more because of the storms just wash them up and wash the pots out of the sea. There's so many amazing initiatives now. Even since I went around Skye, things are popping up all the time to try and reduce fishing net pollution in the sea. So, you know, places where fishing people can drop their nets off for free. And I think it's really important that we don't shame any one particular group or person, and we kind of try and work with everybody to make things more solution based. So with the fishing gear, fortunately there are some amazing groups and organisations doing just that, finding ways to recycle fishing nets and dispose of them appropriately so they don't get washed up onto beaches. But it's got a long way to go, I think, with that.
Well, fingers crossed we find more solutions as quick as we can. Was there any items you like? Did you find anything really old, like foreign items from other countries or anything like that?
I didn't actually. No, not that I noticed.
Yeah.
But you often,
I just want.
I don't know, beach cleans that I've run down in Plymouth and Cornwall, you know, you often find things with Chinese writing on, or stuff that's come over from Ireland, especially in Scotland, actually west coast of Scotland, you get a lot of stuff that comes over from Ireland in the prevailing westerly winds. So it's really interesting finding, you know, having a little look at where stuff's come from.
Ollie, we've got questions in the chat box. I think the first one is
I'm just trying to find them now.
Oh, I'm not sure if you can see them.
Cool. Cara has asked, amazing footage. How did you carry enough water, and did you do your own drone footage?
So I didn't manage to carry enough water for the whole trip. I had to find water sources. I had a water filter with me. So one day I had to hike up a hill to find a little stream to drink from. There was a couple of places. There was one place I pulled in that actually had a tap right by where I pulled in. It was a really random little place, and I kind of pulled my board up over these rocks and found a tap there. So wow, that's really handy. But no, I had to forage for water. Drone footage. So I did the entire trip by myself, and then a couple of days after I'd finished, a man I'd never met before, who offered to help with spreading the word about plastic, came up and met me on the Isle of Skye, and we spent a couple of days driving around the Isle of Skye getting drone footage to add into the film. So he basically brought the film alive by getting the drone footage. And that man, that was 3.5 years ago, he's now in the other room. He became my partner in crime and my very, very dear boyfriend. So it worked out well for him and for me, very much so. But yes, we
good story.
Yeah, we basically we went around the island afterwards, just getting extra footage, because I got a lot of footage on my own camera, but I couldn't be flying a drone and paddleboarding at the same time. So we went and got some exciting footage to add into the film to kind of bring it alive afterwards.
Brilliant. I've got another question that says, did you drop the food prior to the venture? Not sure what that one.
No, and I completely ran out of food. And the last couple of days was basically surviving on Tunnocks tea cakes and green beans. I randomly bumped into somebody. I ended up camping on a little bit of land that I thought was deserted, and it turns out it was somebody's farm. And they very, very kindly came and gave me some rock cakes and green beans. So the last few days I was mostly eating green beans and Tunnocks tea cakes.
Nice mixture.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I get the names wrong. Beige Chater has asked, how did you keep all of your stuff dry?
Yep, so I had a couple of really good dry bags. I have several different types of dry bags. Some of them are roll top ones from Palm Equipment. Others, I had a big zipping one that zipped down the front from Finisterre. Really, really good, basically heavy duty dry bags. Everything dry. I learned that the hard way when I paddled around Cornwall and had stuff just in backpacks on the front of my board and then had a soggy tent. So yeah, made sure I was very careful with my kit this time.
So even if you drop those dry bags in the sea, they're all right? Or?
Exactly, yeah. You could swim with them, you can do anything with them.
That's good.
Yeah, it's one of the most crucial things, especially if you're going through waves. Kit, especially if you're camping and on your own for 10 days in Scotland, where it doesn't really lend itself to drying kit. It can be pretty miserable.
Cool. Maddie Simmons has asked, what time of year did you do the trip?
That was July, end of July. Yep. So didn't have too many midges actually, which is quite surprising, probably because it was so windy. But it was a nice kind of warm time of year. I was paddling just in thin neoprene leggings and boots, and it was a really pleasant time of year.
I'm guessing you wouldn't want to do it in winter.
No.
It would be very cold. What sort of temperature was it then? During the...
It'd probably have been mid to late teens. Yeah. Some days were colder than others, but when you're moving, it's okay. You just kind of get yourself warm. Yeah.
Karen Jags, how much food did you take? I think we've sort of covered that one. And she also said, what were you wearing generally?
So not enough food, and I was wearing neoprene leggings. They were from Palm as well. I think they're quite thin, so you're really mobile in them. You don't want anything too thick when you're paddling all day in those temperatures, because otherwise you just sweat. It's not very pleasant. So I wear neoprene leggings and boots. Always covered my feet. I learnt the hard way paddling around Cornwall about getting chilblains and blisters and rubbing the skin off your feet if you don't protect them. And then on the top half, either a t-shirt. In fact, the t-shirt I'm wearing now, I actually wore on Isle of Skye. So yeah, just a t-shirt and either a rash vest. I've got a really nice like thermal rash vest that I wore some days, otherwise just a t-shirt and a jumper. And then normally I'd have a waterproof cag over the top, which would be windproof as well, so that would keep me nice and warm and dry. Woolly hat, if I felt like it. On this one, I fell in. So the first step I took on my board at Isle of Skye, I fell straight in. It was like something out of a comedy show. If you'd have filmed it, it could have gone viral. Like I stepped on one side of the board and then did like kind of slow-mo running man off the other side immediately, because my board had so many bags on it. It was completely unbalanced. It just like tipped me straight off. So I had to do a bit of rearranging with my bags. And then I fell off once on the south coast of the island. There was a really strong tidal current, and I hadn't had phone signal for days. And I checked my phone, checked the GPS on my phone, and I had signal. I was like, oh my gosh, I can tell my mum I'm alive. And so I hung on to a buoy in the middle of the sea, like a floaty buoy, to try and text my mum and let her know I was okay. And the tide was running so fast, and I was hanging on to this buoy that it just kind of like, slowly my board just tipped underneath me and like kind of flew away underneath me. All my bags were in the water, which is how I know that they're waterproof. And I was kind of just like, oh, hang on, I'm in the water. How did that happen? But fortunately, they were the only 2 times that I fell in around Skye.
Wow, that's impressive.
2 times in 200 miles is good. Ellie Spears has asked, how much does it slow down your paddling when you're carrying all the kit that you need? And how heavy was the kit that you took?
Yeah, so it does slow you down, definitely slows you down, especially if you're paddling into any sort of wind or there's a side wind. Oftentimes the bags will pick up a bit of wind and your board moves a bit with them. I probably had about 25 or 30 kilos worth of kit, so I had quite a lot of kit, maybe even more than that actually. And it was it was quite a pain in the backside. I had 3 big dry bags, and I'd have to kind of heave them up the beach. Anytime I came into land, I'd land my board and then kind of leave that half in the water while I unstrapped all my bags, took one bag up the beach, came back, took another bag up the beach, came back, took my board and my paddle up the beach. So it was a bit of a pain. The year after the Isle of Skye trip, I did a slightly longer paddle from Land's End to John O'Groats, and on that one I took a lot less kit, and I got used to travelling with a lot less kit, and actually, you know, getting used to what was really essential and what wasn't. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a bit stinky, as long as you've got enough food and water. And so I've kind of really pared down what I take when I'm on the board now. So yeah, it does weigh down. Not terribly significantly, and also you couldn't do this kind of thing without it, so it didn't really matter how slow I was going. I had to have the kit with me.
Cool. Something from Ed Soldat. He said, beautiful film. What's the biggest sea state that's manageable on the board?
I think that depends on a lot of things. I think it depends on the individual, like your own body, your own height, your center of gravity, your confidence, your own kind of balance skills and willingness to be out in all weathers. From a kind of personal point of view, I've been out in some pretty big waves on my SUP. I've been out in 7 or 8 foot swell around the Cornish coast. That's, once you're out past the breaking waves, it's just big rolling stuff, and it makes you seasick. But you know, if it's not, as long as it's not breaking, you just have to make sure that you stay on the board. I think the biggest concern with paddleboarding is the wind. That's the thing that has the most impact when you're out on the water. Anything above kind of 12 or 13 miles an hour starts to get really quite annoying on a paddleboard. If you've got a tailwind, it's great because it just pushes you along. If you've got a headwind, obviously it's just so much harder to paddle against because the only part of the board in the water is a really small fin. So you don't really have much kind of stability in the water when it comes to wind. And equally, a side wind, like a side wind's just the worst because it will just pick up the nose of the board and swing it around the whole time. So you end up paddling on just one side of the board the whole time. So that's the most tedious condition to paddle in. And if I had my way, I'd paddle either in, you know, with a constant tailwind or just no wind at all. But yeah, I think once you get up to kind of 16, 17 miles an hour, it gets really a bit kind of borderline, and you definitely don't want to be out unless you've got the wind behind you. I wouldn't go out in anything over about 17, 18 miles an hour. That would be a real struggle once you get to kind of the mid-teens. It gets to be a real struggle.
Cool. A question from Nick and Holly. So 4 years on now since your trip, what progress do you think we have made as a society in our efforts and attitudes against plastic?
That's a fantastic question.
Big question.
I've actually just been, today I was clearing out some hard drives and found an article that I wrote just off the back of the Isle of Skye trip. And one of the questions that the interviewer had asked was, if there's one thing you could ban, one single-use item of plastic that you could ban, what would it be? And my answer was straws, because they're so unnecessary. You know, I understand that there are certain medical conditions that require people to have straws, and that's a different matter. But in kind of general society, we don't need to be using plastic straws in our drinks to drink from. And lo and behold, last year, plastic straws were banned. Plastic straws, stirrers, cotton buds. So we have made amazing change. And I know it's really hard to kind of look at the current situation and how much plastic's being used and the state of our oceans and rivers and think that things haven't changed, but they really have. And attitudes have changed so much over the last few years. When I first started campaigning around plastic in about 2014, there was very little awareness in general society about the problems with plastic. Now you go to the supermarket and people are talking about it, people are discussing, what their stuff's packaged in. And although it is a slow burn, that is making a huge difference in the way that businesses operate. You'll find now that so many businesses that never used to even consider it are now having, looking at their packaging, having statements on the websites about what packaging they're using recycled fishing nets to make cool products from. The government's banning things like straws and stirrers. So we've got a long way to go, but attitudes have changed enormously. And I think it's really important to look at how far we've come in that regard. And all of that is driven from, yes, there are a few companies who are really, really values driven and made amazing changes. But most of that change has come from members of the public like us, using our voices and talking to people about plastic and making it known that this isn't what we want to see on our beaches and in our environment. So I think there's a lot to be grateful for, a lot to be excited for and hopeful around. We just can't take our foot off the gas just yet. We've still got a long way to go. But I think we're reaching a tipping point, and I really do think that in 5 years' time, we'll look back and say, oh, do you remember in the early 2000s when we used all that plastic? Like, what were we thinking? How ridiculous. And we'll have all this amazing innovation and technology, and it'll all be a distant, far-off dream nightmare.
Hopefully. We've got to stay positive, haven't we?
Absolutely.
Okay, the next question from Bay Chater again. Did you find any nurdles on your trip?
Not that I recall. I mean, you saw the states of the beaches there. I was too preoccupied with the big stuff, I think, to really kind of delve in and look for nurdles. Not that I recall, but I'm sure if you went to those beaches and you really kind of sifted through the strand line, you'd find nurdles there. Yeah.
The next question we have is from Rose. What was the strangest thing that you saw or found?
It had to be that cow eating the fishing net. That had to be the strangest thing. I was just not expecting it. So to wake up, literally was blurry-eyed out my tent, like, oh, good morning world, oh my goodness, what is going on that beach? And I think, initially my first thought was, there's animals everywhere, this is so funny. And then it turned from that to, oh God, what can I do about this? So yeah, I think that was the strangest thing I saw, definitely. And
probably one of the most eye-opening things as well.
Definitely, yeah.
Brings it all back, doesn't it?
Yeah, and a couple of days later, I said about accidentally camping on this farmland. I didn't think it was farmland because it was basically just a beach, but I pitched my tent, I pulled in here, pitched my tent, went down to the water's edge, and then came back to my tent, and it was surrounded by Highland cows with massive horns, and I couldn't get anywhere near my tent. And this was a different day to the rope incident. But I was like, oh my gosh, how on earth am I going to get back to my tent? And then just as I was kind of wondering where I was going to sleep that night, the farmer came along, and basically this is where I got my rock cakes and green beans from. But they were telling me all these stories about how they've had to have many of their beautiful cattle operated on to actually remove plastic from their stomachs, and really poorly cows because they've been eating plastic down on the shore. So it was really eye-opening for me. I thought I was there to campaign for the animals in the ocean, the dolphins and the whales, but when it's like a domestic species who I've looked after for half my life as a vet, it brings it back home, definitely.
The next question is from Karen Jaggs. What got you started with doing solo adventures?
So I took stand-up paddleboarding when I lived down in Plymouth, and I think I just was so shocked by all the plastic I was seeing everywhere on the beaches when I was surfing and paddleboarding, and I really, really wanted to do something about it. And there was so much doom and gloom in the media, and there wasn't heaps in the media at that time, but what there was turtles with straws stuck up the nose and going on about how awful this was. And yet I was there on these beaches finding plastic water bottles and thinking, this is such an easy fix. Like, we can use a refillable bottle here. This is fixable. And I'd heard about a couple of guys who'd paddled around Cornwall a year or two previously, and I thought, well, if a couple of guys can do that, then I can do that. And very, very naive, had barely done any training or knew much about tides, and was a real kind of steep learning curve. But that I basically just wanted to find a way to positively talk to people about this stuff, and I figured that doing an adventure would be the way to do it. And that first Cornwall adventure I did with a friend, and then the Isle of Skye expedition, I was supposed to do with a friend as well, but then my friend unfortunately couldn't. She was meant to run around the coast while I paddled. Unfortunately, she couldn't carry on because her dog, who she was meant to do it with, basically sat down on day one and refused to go any further. So I just cracked on my own. So it was kind of an unexpected solo journey, but I'm really, really glad I did it alone, because it was very eye-opening as to my own kind of decision-making ability. I've always thought of myself as a bit of a faffer and not really able to make decisions, and this expedition proved that very much wrong. Like, when put in situations without anybody to pass those decisions off onto, I was like, oh right, I know what to do here. Really, really empowering. So yeah, a real kind of blessing in disguise, definitely.
Oh, great. Nick and Holly have asked, is there a film from your Cornish trip?
There isn't from the Cornish trip, but there is a film from my Land's End to John O'Groats trip, which features a lot of Cornwall. It's on my website. If you go to calmajor.com, and there's a film section there, it's called Vitamin C. That feels like a really shameless plug. It's on there, and proceeds from that are going to help set up the charity I've just set up.
Cool. Question from Anna's ring ding. Is there any plastic that you will not collect, or you think you should avoid for safety reasons?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I always suggest to people when they are doing beach cleans or plastic cleanups, only to do what you're comfortable with. Every piece of plastic that you're picking up is a good thing. It's a kind of a charitable and a good thing that you're doing. So if there are things that you feel uncomfortable picking up, that you're not happy to, like, that's okay. You're still doing a positive thing with the stuff that you are picking up. And so it depends where I am, what kind of facilities I have, but particularly at the moment, I'm very careful about picking up masks and gloves. We've all got to be careful about our personal hygiene when it comes to COVID. If you've got a litter picker and the right kind of equipment, might be a different matter. But you've got to put your own health and safety first. And I think not feeling guilty about that, like feeling positive of what you can do. I once found a human turd with loads of baby wipes around it. I refused to pick them up. Wasn't picking up someone else's baby wipes, even though they had plastic in it, and that was on a beach. I think things like sharp objects. I've been on beaches where there have been needles and sharp things, and I've had the right facilities so I can put them in a sharps bin. But I've equally been places where there've been sharp items and I've not had the facilities to collect them, so I've left them in situ. Really is important to look after yourself first. Normally I have a pair of beach cleaning gloves in my car, so if I am somewhere and I find something minging, I've at least got a pair of gloves.
Cool. Dan has asked, he said, inspirational and a fantastic achievement.
Thanks, Dan.
People tend to make decisions based on emotion, and therefore there presumably needs to be an emotional connection created with topics such as plastic pollution. What are the best approaches you have seen? Or if money were no object, what approach would you take?
Dan, what a question. So I completely agree. And when I was paddling from Land's End to John O'Groats, one of the things I was doing there was kind of looking at what people were doing about plastic and how we could inspire other people to do stuff about plastic. And I had this sudden epiphany in a little Scottish fishing town that we could bang on to people about plastic till the cows came home. But if they don't, we could say it's bad for the ocean, but if they don't care about the ocean, we can't expect people to care about plastic in the ocean. So I've just set up a charity to try and connect more people to the ocean, so that we can create more ocean advocates who get the mental health benefits of being by the sea that we do, who are more likely to protect it. And the more I've kind of investigated into this through research and also through kind of anecdotal evidence and meeting people, the more it seems that people need to spend time in that environment, like actually find an emotional connection to it. So what is an emotional connection for me could be completely different for you. Like, I bloody love animals. I'll do anything for animals. So if I see a dolphin, like, that's just, I just don't want to see that harm, so I'll do anything I can to look after it. Whereas for another person, it could be something completely different. And I think trying to facilitate that connection for people, trying to introduce people to the water and introduce people to the idea that everybody can be part of this conversation, can be part of this narrative, I think it's really important. So one thing we're doing with the charity, is a couple of branches to it, but one of the things is actually kind of physically getting people out into that environment and getting them to experience it, and in a way that's meaningful to them. And I think if money was no option, the first thing I would do would be to take the 1 in 5 kids in the UK who's never been to the beach, take them to the beach, like get them there, take them there once a week for a month, and get them to interact with it and kind of start those conversations and get people feeling like they're part of that environment. Yeah, I think otherwise we're just so disconnected geographically and you know, from and what I mean by that is in our cities, you know, we're kind of like, we're walled in, aren't we? We're walled in from nature, and if we could break down those walls a bit more and get people out into nature a bit more, I think we'd get a lot more ocean advocates who want to stand up for our planet. This is something I'm exceptionally passionate about, so I'm sorry that I was just a huge rant, but it's so crucial, and it's kind of, I've kind of taken a step away from specifically campaigning around plastic pollution to go down this route, because I think it's the first step, and you know, we've really got to kind of address that.
Yeah, and I think the next question from Marie sort of leads on as well, saying, what can the children growing near the coast do to help? So they say they do regular beach cleans, but what other simple ideas could you suggest? Our 10-year-old daughter would really love to help.
Ah, brilliant, excellent. So fantastic that she's already doing beach cleans. I think the first thing is to maintain her own connection to the water. So continue to be inquisitive and learning about that environment, you know, spend time there, snorkel there, beach comb there, whatever you can do to stay in the water. Kids have really, really loud voices these days, so much more impactful than my voice, than most of the adults on his voice. Like, I think making her voice heard is really important, and that can be in a number of places. It can be at school, so I think talking to teachers and trying to figure out how, as a school, you can protect the ocean, whether that's teaching other kids about the ocean, whether that's having field trips out to the sea, becoming a plastic-free school, or whether that's as a school, as a group of young people writing to your MP and explaining why you care about the sea, asking your MP to stand up for the ocean as well. I think in terms of kind of simple wins, I think using your voice to encourage somebody else to go to the sea, like taking a member of your family who maybe doesn't have that connection to the ocean, getting them down to the sea and showing them all the cool stuff that you love, and trying to get them excited about the ocean as well. So yeah, the kids really do have the power these days, and I feel really, really proud of all the kids who are standing up and looking after the ocean, and really grateful to them as well. So thank you very much to that young lady.
The next question from Cara. Do you wear gloves to stop blisters on your hands? And what did you use to film? Was it a GoPro, mobile?
I don't wear gloves. Don't really get blisters, actually. If you wear gloves, it can put more tension on your forearms, so it can create tendonitis. So I tend not to wear gloves if I can help it. Obviously, this time of year, it's a bit different. What did I use to film? So I have a Panasonic GH4, which is a film camera, basically. I'd use that most of the time. When I was on the water, I would use a GoPro, and yeah, I've definitely added to the marine litter crisis with several GoPros, unfortunately, over the years. So yeah, I use GoPro and GH4. I don't tend to use my phone for filming because I've got an old phone that wouldn't film very well. Yeah. And then when my now boyfriend came and did the other stuff, he brought all his fancy kit up. He had loads of nice cameras and drones and stuff.
Cool. Adela Morton has asked, what board did you use for the adventure?
Yeah, so I have a 12'6" starboard Pinetech touring board, which I absolutely love. It's super stable, really speedy, really fun. It's a hard board. It's made with bioresin, so it doesn't use some of the nasty chemicals that a lot of surfboard and paddleboard compositions are made of. It's got a pointy nose and it's got a concave bottom, so it goes through the water a bit more glidey. These are all technical terms. And yeah, so it's a really lovely board. It's got lots of tie down points on the front and back to strap kit to.
Nice. Another question from B. Sorry, I was getting your name wrong, B. How many different species of wildlife did you see, and what were they, and what was your best encounter?
So I saw seals, I saw dolphins, I saw eagles, sea eagles, kind of saw an otter, saw some movement out the corner of my eye, which James saw and I didn't, but I'm going to count that seeing an otter. I was promised that in the Minches, which is between the Hebrides and Skye, I was promised that I was going to see whales, because apparently that's where all the whales love to go. I was also told I might see orca on the south coast. I didn't see any orca and I didn't see any whales, so I was very, very disappointed. But I really, really loved the dolphins, and I was a bit scared of seals, so I didn't enjoy that as much. But I've got over my fear of seals now. But the eagles were phenomenal, because you'd just be paddling along on this really remote part of the island where there's just no people, and I'd be out in the water like just miles from anything, and just see this massive like soaring bird of prey just soaring around on top of, like, over the cliffs and over the sea. It was really, really special. And a lot of jellyfish as well.
Didn't want to fall in on top of them.
Not the Scottish jellyfish, not the lion's mane ones.
Oh yeah, God, they're quite bad, aren't they?
Jellyfish.
Yeah. Sarah Hughes has asked, as she said, very inspiring and motivating. Are you campaigning full-time now, or still doing your veterinary work?
Thank you very much. I am full-time in Enviro stuff. I do a lot of speaking and make a lot of films these days as well. So that's what I'm doing full time. I'm still a vet. I'm still very proud to be a vet. I consider myself to be advocating for the animals out in the ocean that have a voice. So I do still do some vet stuff, just not your typical vet stuff that's in a clinical practice. So I work with a couple of charities and a little bit with governing bodies and that kind of thing within the veterinary profession. So little bits of vetting stuff, but mostly enviro and film stuff.
Cool. A couple more, I think. Nick and Holly again has asked, have you ever seen whales on the SUP before?
No.
Oh,
never.
The one thing.
Yeah, but I will do one day. I'm absolutely determined. Even if I still have to be paddleboarding on 98 to see my whale, I will see a whale on my paddleboard. Have
you seen dolphins though, or?
Many dolphins.
Yeah.
It's a very special experience seeing dolphins.
Yeah. Someone called Amy is asking, where are you from? They're watching it with their whole family and her northern mum can't work it out.
That's really funny. It's because I'm currently up in Cumbria, so my northern accent has been really, really developed. Like, I'll go back to home to Devon when we're allowed to travel, and all my friends will take the mick out of me for being northern again. I was actually born in Warrington, which is between Manchester and Liverpool, My mum's side of the family are from North Yorkshire, and my dad's side are from Cambridge, so I'm a bit of a hybrid. But I've lived in Devon since 2014, and this is a real life story now. I'm sorry to bore you if this is really, really tedious, but my boyfriend lives in the North Lake District. So at this point in time, I have a very northern accent, but once I go back to Devon, it will probably get a bit less northern.
There you go. That's the answer.
Anything.
Okay, I think they've just got one more, which is just a reminder of what your charity is called.
Yeah.
Does everyone know?
So it's called Seaful, which is SEAFUL, just one L. And that's a amalgamation of mindful and the sea. So it's trying to help more people be mindful of the sea. And as part of that, we have the Vitamin C Project and Vitamin C TV. And we've just set it up. So the website's not live yet, so don't go Googling it just yet. But we're really, really excited to launch in the next few weeks, hopefully. Yeah, I feel very, very passionately that this is a really important step for people's well-being, and also for the ocean's well-being, because it's all connected after all. So yes, hopefully be able to have some updates with that in the next few weeks.
Great, I'll certainly be following. I think we'll wrap it up there. It's been really, really good. I've absolutely loved it. Thanks, and I've loads of thank yous in the chat as well.
Thank you.
Got Freya aged 11 and Yasmin aged 9 as well. So you got the young audience here, yes, inspiring them. It's good.
Thank you so much for everyone for getting involved and for asking questions as well. That's the beauty of all being able to get together online, isn't it? Is keep discussions going. Otherwise, we're all just going to go mental. So I think it's really nice to be able to actually get a discussion going. So thank you everybody for participating in that, and for you guys for inviting me to come and speak to you.
No worries. Just a reminder, if anyone would like to get involved with Wembury Environment Group, go ahead. We've got our Facebook page. Send us a message, or we've got an email, wemburyenvironmentgroup@gmail.com. Thanks again, Cal. It's been brilliant. And don't forget, our next talk is on the 3rd of March. So we hope to see you all there again. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.